Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the SmackDown preview. I am joined left and right by Michaels, Hamflet, and Sidgwick. Say hello, boys.
Hello, boys.
Got Wilborn's whole spiel here. Before we get into it and discuss all the big burning issues, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from for daily wrestling podcasts, where we review not only Raw and SmackDown, as we're doing right here, but pay-per-views, interviews, roundtable discussions, and all the big talking points of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But as I say, I am joined by Michael Hamflet and Michael Sidgwick to preview SmackDown, which has not been as good as Raw lately, but this is still a new day and anything can happen. It could be really good, so we'll see what we can get out of this. First of all, the biggest talking point, Luke Harper's back.
Luke Harper is back.
Luke Harper's back. Nobody really had Eric Rowan beating Roman Reigns, least of all it being a big surprise from the crowd, which, as we've already said, the crowd didn't spoil by being remotely excited from hopping that barrier, so we got that lovely shot of him hitting it down the camera. Now, what's going on here? Why is he back? Is it a Bludgeon Brothers reunion? Is it going to be something else?
Oh, there's a very, very exhausting bit of discourse in which people are saying that Harper was brought back to spite Dave Meltzer because Dave Meltzer had answered a question on the mailbag of Wrestling Observer Radio saying, "Oh, where's Harper?" And he's just like, "I don't bloody know. They don't like him. He can't do a southern accent. He had an absolute mare at WrestleMania weekend. Therefore, they've added some time onto his contract, and the expectation is when said contract is up, he's just going to go to AEW." Turns up like within 5 days on WWE again. People have said that Meltzer subsequently reported that the call was made on Friday to Harper to appear at Clash of Champions. So it's a short-term storyline. Whether the impetus is to spite the Dirts, I don't think that's the case. I just think they've put two and two together. Oh, they used to be pals. He could be an accomplice. This is a good way to get Roman Reigns defeated without it being clean, because heaven forbid we do a clean finish. The truth is definitely not the Meltzer thing.
I think like this speaks to the pink slime that runs under WWE, like in Ghostbusters 2.
Kevin Dunn.
They would have this guy that they were so willing to do nothing with and extend his contract with that awful injury extension stipulation thing just to keep him away from AEW. And at the point at which they think that's perhaps no longer a threat, it's like, all right, you can go back on TV, have these scraps getting back with your ex-tag partner who we've made a star in your absence. I actually think that this is the only time we're going to see anything big from him, if we see anything at all, because within a month, 2 months, he's going to be getting beaten by Roman Reigns. He's another warm body for the SmackDown roster ahead of a big television move where, as Sidgwick points out, there was a need for a sort of exciting, shocking finish, and they found one, but I don't think the end result of this is a push for Harper again. I wouldn't be getting excited if I was one of his ardent fans, of which there appear to be many.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Harper, again, as Hamflet points out, don't expect like big things, but for the short term, I'm actually expecting like quite good things.
He's so great as well.
Like, Harper's really, really talented, and I hate this whodunit storyline for reasons that I'm getting tired of discussing. But if nothing else, it got Buddy Murphy some bangers on SmackDown. It's absorbed Harper back into the fold. It's given guys something of note to do. So I'm quite happy about
Rowan's
that.
doing okay.
I would say one name you haven't mentioned in all of this is Daniel Bryan. So where is Daniel Bryan in all of this? Hasn't been on the last two pay-per-views now.
Either, and I don't think this is the plan from the start, funnily enough, either he is going to team up with Roman Reigns because he does in fact hate liars.
Consistent.
Rowan had in fact exercised his autonomy and no longer wished to be under anyone's control, setting up a Bryan and Reigns versus Bludgeon Brothers tag team match, which is an insane turn of events. Or there's going to be some kind of faction led by Bryan. A very convoluted way of getting there, but I'm kind of here for that because lost amid all the fact that Bryan was relegated following WrestleMania 35, his team with Rowan, I thought was really, really good.
Yeah.
I thought the tag team matches they had on pay-per-view, I think they had a pair earlier this year. I thought the work was absolutely excellent.
Established heavy machinery in one night as a real team, not just
a
load of jokes.
They teased the idea that Big E could be a big star in that triple threat, which I thought was really good. So basically anything remotely connected with Daniel Bryan, I've got complete faith in getting over, and I'm excited to see what happens tonight.
I think you get both things there, just nothing tonight. I think, because it sounds so big on paper, if you've got 2 weeks left to push Harper and Rowan as a big deal again, you promote Reigns and Bryan versus Harper and Rowan for that first Friday Fox SmackDown, and then you do the twist on the night, and it's Bryan leading the two big giants, and that's where he reveals the plan was to get to Roman all along. We're days away from Hell in a Cell, we're weeks away from the Survivor Series. They've got time with this storyline. I think it's a match that on a poster looks fantastic. Even on the night, they just deliver a twist.
What's the premise of this supposed stable then? Men with beards or people who miss Bray Wyatt?
I mean, up until about 6 months ago, nobody missed Bray
Nobody
Wyatt.
missed Bray Wyatt, yeah.
I mean, this could be Harper saying that Bryan has helped him find his way again. You know, like Bryan has been quite good he was a quasi-cult leader, wasn't he, with, Rowan? So it would be easy for them to just weave what we know about Harper's exile into the storyline. While Daniel Bryan was away, he reached out to Harper, something like that. It's fairly easy got to, I think.
Yeah, if we're going to give them some credit,
Everybody look down the camera lens.
which is quite difficult. You know, Daniel O'Brien does have an agenda that he wants to further, and like this whole like environmentalist eco-terrorist thing. Who better henchman to sort of carry that out and enable him to disrupt the WWE universe than two guys who are demonstrably capable of beating piss out of people to his benefit?
And in the vignettes, he just spent loads of time in the woods. You know, they're clearly men of the forest, bludgeoning people with the big hammers. Maybe that's where he found them.
I like this idea. We may or may not see where this goes tonight. But
Daniel Bryan has spoken on a podcast that just said he feels very tranquil and at ease when he's in the woodland.
So getting Andrade in is what you're saying. Anyway, we may see where that goes tonight on SmackDown. One thing we will definitely see is Baron Corbin's coronation. Now, you were on yesterday with me and Murray, and we said, do we need to wait and see the final of this match, the final of this tournament rather, before we can say whether or not the King of the Ring was a success? So I asked, now that we've seen the final match, was the King of the Ring a success?
I think it was a success on multiple levels. I think there's a new dialogue around Monday Night Raw that it's very much improved. I think the stakes and the level of match quality that the King of the Ring provided has a great deal to do with that. Look, the booking of Chad Gable was absolutely useless. So useless, in fact, that he had to win the crowds over and over again in each match. However, the net result is that you've got a guy who, at the very least, could be the next 1, 2, 3 kid in terms of that's a guy who needs to get over. Chin him for 15 minutes. You'll make you look great. That's a really good push, potentially, for Chad Gable. And Baron Corbin has leveled up big time. And realistically, there's only one kind of aim for the vehicle. There's no passenger seat. It's a star vehicle for the winner. And Baron Corbin has been superb throughout this King of the Ring tournament. So I think it's had a lot of positive impacts on WWE.
Is Corbin the right shout for the winner?
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of the best King of the Rings ever, and I'll have to say it's probably the best in the modern era, because it's one of the first times I can remember, probably since Brock last won it, when it was still a pay-per-view, that you believe WWE's shtick about the winner mattering and the winner playing into things later on down the road. Corbin is as good doing the infuriating king crack as he is a wrestler all of a sudden. So you've got yourself a king that can do both. We just assumed he would win because he would look like an arse in a crown and annoy the fans. And now he can have that, and then he can fight Gable in rematches. He can fight great wrestlers, earnestly great wrestlers on the show, not defending his crown, but defending his right to walk around looking like an idiot in a cape and a crown.
Which one of you two came up with Throne Wolf?
That was me.
Well done, sir. Are you feeling quite smug about this?
I wasn't at the time when Sidgwick gave me a death stare across this table for such a rancid pun, but it's sort of it's only come good because Baron Corbin
Has
got
also
good.
come good. Yeah.
I can't wait for the speech itself.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it'll be very, very good.
Class. WWE are good at this, aren't
Yeah.
Is there something slightly, maybe not poetic, whatever the opposite of that is, in that it's a Monday Night Raw competitor being crowned on SmackDown after they pulled it off the pay-per-view in the first place? Or is that just where we are with what a mess it all is at the moment?
That.
Amazingly, all of a sudden, Baron Corbin is numbers. Because the guy blamed for ratings, the ratings sinkhole last year is being stretched not just across a pay-per-view, but across two TV shows
television
to get the numbers off him.
Where does Chad Gable go from here? I know you said he's got this role coming forward as someone who people can get over with, but where on the card is that? Do you think they're going to see him as a realistic prospect?
I'd like to think that, if nothing else, and I think you can star in this role because as much as I adore his work, I think it's so intricate and advanced and able to elevate everything around him, he's got kind of a ceiling in terms of how charismatic he is and how good he is at promos or how not great he is at promos. He's the perfect heater. His matches are awesome. He can win over dead crowds. Just, in my opinion, if you want to get a heel over, there is no one better equipped to do that right now than Chad Gable.
Michael Hamflett, he is short, though.
He is indeed very short. So I'll say teaming with Titus O'Neil.
I'm really gutted Wilborn's not here for this because he would absolutely love that. We'll try and move through the rest of this quite quickly. We'll be getting something about Kofi Kingston, him successfully defending the championship at Clash of Champions. Now, as I pointed out earlier on, WWE's social media patter around Kingston at the minute is very much asking him, who's your next opponent? Who would you like to face next? Where are you going after this? So they're kind of already moving on in some capacity from Randy Orton. Now, whether or not that remains to be the case, we will find out. But do you think that's it? Is that the end of that feud?
I mean, please. Please. I've been largely positive on this podcast, but come on, this isn't just Sidgwick being Sidgwick about this feud. End it. It was dire, it was boring, it was old-fashioned, it had no heat. The great irony is that Randy Orton, for a long, long time, wasn't that great a character on WWE TV. He's been great in promos and character work and helping building programs, but the fact of the matter is that he's just so unexciting in the ring nowadays. Nobody wants to see this. I mean, it was getting Kofi Kingston booed.
Yeah, it was either silence or boos on Sunday. I mean, decent angles, horrendous matches. SummerSlam could have been an aberration because they were building to that iffy little finish. But this was a clean finish. This was 20 minutes for that clean finish, and it was dreadful. It was really, really poor from both of them as well because it didn't feel
it was technically sound, but who cares?
Who cares about technically sound? The Trouble in Paradise has been reduced to being this out-of-nowhere finisher, much like the RKO, ironically, rather than anything that Kofi can build to. If they have to extend this, I'm an advocate for having FT RKO versus the New Day in a cell for all the titles.
Winner takes all.
Yeah,
That'd be interesting.
And I think if they're going to do that, that at least builds a bit of prestige around Kofi's title reign again because he's worthy of a Hell in a Cell match. As it stands, Raw's got the monopoly on that, and Kofi looks even more of a mid-carder defending his title on a show called Hell in a Cell in a mid-card match with no cage.
What do you both make of Kofi's title run so far? Because it feels like every time they give him a new opponent, we're like, this could be the one that kicks it on. Because we thought Samoa Joe was a really great potential thing, but that was quite short-lived. Randy Orton felt like there was story there was history there was definitely a believable angle in it, but it's really, really underwhelmed. Has it been a bit of a bust?
I think it's been more than a bit of a bust.
Peaked at WrestleMania for me.
It was never Kofi Mania for me. It was Bryan Mania. It truly was just great work. And I'm not saying he carried Kofi Kingston because Kofi Kingston obviously is a very good performer. He's just not a main event talent. He's never once projected himself as a world champion. He's never raised anybody to the level of a world champion. Kofi Kingston versus Dolph Ziggler was a mid-card feud in wolf's clothing. The Samoa Joe match was really boring, really quiet. Exactly the same thing happened with Randy Orton. There's a pattern developing, and he's the constant throughout it.
That's it. Yeah, that your Bryan take is not without reasonable reflection. We waited on this podcast for months and months saying, well, if only he was given the right opponent.
Yep.
If only he was given the right opponent. We believed Randy Orton to be that opponent because as an established main eventer, and with Kofi being as talented as he is, that was going to be the one. And that hasn't materialised. It is okay now at this point to say, if you were going to switch the belt off him on tonight's SmackDown or very, very soon, it wouldn't be unfair. It wouldn't be a shock.
Is there anybody in your minds who could be that opponent? I know we've just literally said we always say this, it never quite works out, but is there anybody they haven't had a shot with yet? Or could they go back to Bryan, maybe?
Bryan would be the one for me. It'd be a nice bit of resolution to everything. Daniel Bryan proved throughout his run that he could take whatever segment he was in and get viral with it. He could get critical acclaim with it. He could get reactions to it. It was funny. It was genuinely entertaining. It was just great stuff all around. If anyone is equipped to lead SmackDown into the Fox era, in my opinion, it's him.
It would feel rushed right now, but the only heel that springs to mind, because we've just spoken about him, is Baron Corbin. He is an overact. I'm not saying the match would deliver, by the way. I'm just saying he's an overact at the moment who is bringing with him this reputation of suddenly being able to work great 10, 15-minute matches when Kofi's in desperate need for one. This pay-per-view is going to happen right as SmackDown moves to Fox and right before there's a draft. So you can kind of get away with a one-shot match for Kofi before they swap the rosters around again or before you do that panicked pre-Survivor Series switch that they seem to love doing now. So there's possibly worse than Corbin, but then he probably has to lose, and he's not well placed for that.
I mean, I'm looking back at the SmackDown episodes of the past 1 or 2 months, and they've not built anybody realistically. There's no heel who's been profiled that you could realistically say, all right, okay, they've done something quite clever by building him quietly in the background, other than Shane McMahon. No, I'm not being funny. Who else?
There's been talk of this, in fairness.
Who else? I mean, Andrade's been booked very inconsistently. Who else is a heel on SmackDown? Elias is nowhere near a main event level performer. Really enjoy him for what he is, but he's not a main event level performer. I mean, there's no heel that's been built adequately.
They'll be saving Shane for Crown Jewel 2 when he cashes in his trophy for the big shot in Saudi Arabia.
God. No shouts for Dominic? Oh, well, anyway, moving on. Oh, actually, one final thought. Where does Randy Orton go in your minds after this?
Away.
The bin?
Yeah,
Away.
A long time away. Put him in that group of wrestlers that they seem to have no problem doing this to mid-carders, that they just cycle off television for a bit. I'm sure he won't mind. He seems to just really enjoying his money at this point. So give him a bit of a break when he does come back, as they did last year. When he came back, I think it was against Jeff Hardy, or when he injured Ty Dillinger around the post. He was quite fun, and it was like
it was really good.
Small doses Randy Orton. I'm all for, because you can still provide a modicum of entertainment, but just not too many of these matches and not too much profile.
Moving on, we will be getting another installment of Charlotte and Bayley at some point on this show. Now, they were both involved in the angle on Monday Night Raw, and they both got 3 minutes or something to get through their match at Akarsha Champions. Is the SmackDown Women's title picture already just a footnote in the Raw Women's title picture? Given the 4 women involved are so interconnected, is it just becoming like a side story in all of it?
It's in danger of that. I've got optimism because I feel like Hell in a Cell will right what a lot of people felt was very, very wrong about Clash of Champions. I didn't have quite as big a problem with it, but I can understand why the booking let them down, considering the expectations on them.
From everything, from the duration to the nature of the finish, it was a Divas match.
There was an element of that, and I don't think it served. Of all the people to have that kind of match, Bayley and Charlotte weren't those characters, but it did. I do think it helped Bayley. I think she's the one at the moment I would like if they were a little bit more creative with this, and they had Bayley say, "Sorry, Charlotte, back of the line. There's no rematches anymore. And you had your shot." I think that would be a much better. Charlotte's going to get a match in a month, but the idea is that she sends it at the back of the line, and Charlotte has to work her way back up, and in the meantime, Bayley just tries her hardest to pretend she's not there, when all along she's a looming threat.
It'd be a great way to feature the women who've just been completely forgotten about in the rest of that division, having Charlotte go through them week on television. As we always see, Charlotte does get great matches out of people, certainly well above the levels that you normally expect. Is she definitely getting a rematch at Hell in a Cell, though?
Yeah, I would think so. They'll be, in their minds, the reason Clash was what it was is because they had something longer in mind for Hell in a Cell.
Nobody else potentially. Again, it's the same with the WWE title picture.
Who the build? I mean, they're trying to feature Ember Moon more prominently, like relative to the rest of the roster. She was beaten quite handily at SummerSlam and hasn't really done much since.
Fire and Desire, one of them could be a contender, absolutely. But again, they're kind of the perfect team to put in front of Charlotte to work her way back through. You know, I think there's more sort of something more enjoyable in Bayley trying to dodge Charlotte rather than just immediately rushing to the rematch that we all know is going to happen.
Given that they haven't made a song and dance about the no rematch clause being a thing anymore, like putting it at the back of the line is no-brainer television, you would think, if only to get you to that pay-per-view. But we shall see. Speaking of SmackDown Championships being a bit of a footnote on Monday Night Raw, this new SmackDown Tag Team Champions got demolished by Braun Strowman, and
one of them did.
Very much a case of being careful what you wish for here, because me and Andy said yesterday that, what do you do with Braun? He lost 2 matches in one night now. What do you do with him? Just have him smash some goobers. That'll get his aura back.
That's what they did.
Yeah.
It did, but they did it with the 2 reigning Tag Team Champions. You bury the entire division on both show in the process.
I mean, Howie. Like, they shouldn't be so negative. I mean, for God's sake, it's 2 sets of Tag Team Champions, World Tag Team Champions. So it really is difficult to, like, approach this new reign with any kind of enthusiasm whatsoever, which is a shame because I thought the Revival, like, were really good at Clash of Champions. It was a 10-minute match. No one's going to remember it in however many years, but I just thought for the time they were given, they performed really well. I don't even know who's on SmackDown as a tag team.
I feel like, as anything, that's why the New Day feud would help, because it stops you having to force trying to get one tag team over just in time to have a pay-per-view match in 3 weeks.
I tell you what would be good, because they're such goofballs and they're so endearing and like quite like absurd with it. Revival versus Heavy Machinery.
I'd be up for that.
That would be a good program. Can you imagine Dawson and Wilder like playing off Otis in his buffoonery
last week?
I think it would genuinely be quite funny and would make for good like drama.
It wasn't. I think it might have been you saying this on our SmackDown podcast. It wasn't for nothing that Heavy Machinery got Madison Square Garden SmackDown squash. Like, of all the teams that they could have picked, or of all the single stars or whatever, they had 10 minutes of TV time to fill on pretty much nothing, and they gave it to Heavy Machinery. Maybe that wasn't for nothing. Maybe we were underestimating their ability to slightly plan more than 1 week at a time.
Forget who it was, but somebody said that Madison Square Gardens is a great testing ground for them in terms of how over people are. The reason they probably got that spot was to, test the water to see whether or not
they're going to have to push Steve Austin.
At long last, in my opinion. Every time a new tag team gets any of the belts on any of the brands, there's always some song and dance made. Or maybe they're going to get the time and they're going to get the matches and they're going to be the ones that reignite the tag division. And we've literally already said it with the revival on Raw. But is it going to be this time? Are they going to finally commit to tag team wrestling a bit?
Without going into a big macro deep dive about how much he demonstrably hates it, I will just say no.
When you say he, do you mean Vince or Eric?
Vince.
Or everybody.
As if Eric's got any influence at all.
Well, yeah, we'll take that with whatever the hell we get with it. One last thing, Nakamura and Zayn. Nobody really sort of expected Nakamura to retain that belt. In fact, I think we actually said on one of these previews, the only way Nakamura was going to retain that belt is if it's being stacked so obviously that The Miz is going to win, that's supposed to be a swerve. And yet, lo and behold, he actually did. So where are they going with this now, do you think? They're going to be on TV this week?
They might do a rematch, you know.
Maybe.
They might very well do a rematch. I enjoyed Sunday.
It's a good act, this.
It's a pretty good... I was
Nakamura and
finally
Zayn.
getting a reaction. It felt like it was finally clicking. It wasn't just silence. It was kind of like, groans, like, please shut this guy up, please. And I think Miz got a really good reaction when he launched the microphone by the entranceway. I enjoyed it. Sami Zayn's got, like, a natural wit. So he's got, that's a half-decent arm drag there from the Miz. Like, incredulous. I thought that was genuinely quite funny. It's kind of got a bit of something about this act. So, yeah, it needs to be on TV. Tell you what, Aleister Black versus Shinsuke Nakamura could be something.
Nakamura, for all that we kind of joke about him on being on his Nakamura WWE holidays, does work up to the quality of stuff being given to him. So his run up to WrestleMania against AJ Styles, you felt that old Nakamura was back again. And I felt that on Sunday against The Miz. Whether or not his work rate's nowhere near his New Japan level, but you can tell at least he's got some enthusiasm for his job again. And I think he's quite enjoying this. I sense that he likes the chemistry he's in. And someone like Aleister Black would be perfect because the matches would surely deliver. But the idea of Sami Zayn bantering off Aleister Black's latest weird crack would actually make for 2 or 3 weeks of entertaining television. It wouldn't just be the match for the sake of a match.
And if nothing else, he's got a nice new cape. So yes, that was the SmackDown preview. Thank you all so much for joining us. I've had Michael to the left and Michael to the right. Say goodbye, boys. And where can they get you on Twitter?
At Michael Hamflet.
At M. Sidgwick.
You get me at Adam Clery, CLERY, because none of us have deleted our accounts. Anyway, the whole WhatCulture family is at WhatCulture WWE. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and also to follow WhatCulture Wrestling on Acast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. And we will see you all soon. Bye.